Okay, I have a couple of things I wanted to add to the very quick overview and some of the extra links that I had sent you to regarding Chapter 1. One of which is for you to really grasp how much media permeates your life. I mean, it is everywhere, and it is very pervasive, and for you it has always been there. One stat I read said that this is the average. The average media user in the U.S. spends 2,350 hours per week a year on just radio and TV alone. Radio and TV alone, over 2,300, and that's the average. And college students, you're way above the average, so you're much higher. So we're talking about 4,000 hours a year, and that's relatively conservative that you spend consuming media. Now, granted, you might be multitasking. I certainly hope you are during some of that time. You know, you're listening to the radio and you're driving. You're scanning something on Facebook at the same time that you may be interspersed trying to do your homework. I'm sure that never happens. But the bottom line is that you are a media consumer. And you are inundated with it. And it's important that you take the time to really fight to be a critical consumer of that media and a critical, just let's call it a critic period in terms of the media that you consume. So in the next few slides here, I'm just throwing together a quick PowerPoint, and honestly, I'm typing it as we go with some of the things in this chapter that I want to either highlight or I want to give you new information that's not in the book. And so I'm not really sure exactly how long this is going to go. It's literally a lecture, as like in a typical classroom where it's not entirely rehearsed, and there are definite things that I want to touch on. So that's it for now. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to touch bases on the section that talks about the 5 eras of media. I know we went over this in the very quick overview, in the Jing overview of the chapter when I showed you that real quick Prezi. I want to highlight just a couple of things there. First of all, when you look at this, the idea of the oral tradition, the first one, in this era, everything was the spoken word. A tribe's mythology, a tribe's history was passed down. The most powerful person in that tribe was the tribal storyteller. And was that person who could recount great numbers of years, great histories of individuals, of people, of great clashes of one tribe against another. And they were the keeper of the history, and they were very revered. They were the elders of any particular tribe, of any particular community. And the oral tradition was very amazing in many ways. Vocabulary had its own different rules in terms of quantity. Truth very much was in an individual. It was in the spoken word. And what you said is what people relied on. After the oral tradition came the written tradition. And in this, we have the idea of creating an alphabet. The Phoenicians were the first to create an alphabet, followed by the Greeks. And at the same time, paper was invented in China, and that had its own, impact. But when writing came along, it was different because now there was no need for this extensive memory in terms of what you have in your head. Now you could take this oral history and you could refer it, you could transcribe it, you could sort of save it in an external hard drive, if you will, as in write it down on a piece of paper. And so all of a sudden the extensive need for memorization and the extensive need for relying on memory that was so common and so valued in the oral tradition became less because we could put it in writing. So it's an interesting impact on what that had to do with our use of memory. And really interesting, I'm actually doing some additional reading my own right now on the power of memory and how to expand your memory. And there's a wonderful book called Moonwalking with Einstein that talks about different ways that people stretch their memory during the oral tradition. It's really fascinating. But anyway, so then we have this written era. After the written era comes Gutenberg and his idea of print and his development of the printing press. And what this did is this took the written era out of the realm of the elite, the highly educated, or the clergy. The priests had control over that. But they were the educated ones. They were the ones who had control over learning alphabets and writing, the idea of paper and ink. That was very expensive. But all of a sudden print comes out, the idea of the printing press, and it's not just a matter of writing, it's a matter of the accessibility to text just went through the roof in terms of the number and the likelihood that you could run across it. And what that did is that put writing in the hands of the common man. And so truth at this point had shifted. It was no longer in the, truth was not in the words of people, truth was in the print. That was a big shift. Where does truth lie? Well, now we want it in writing. You can say whatever you want, but put it in writing. That's the era now. And of course, we have the electronic. And with the electronic era, we have this industrial revolution, the shift from agricultural, which I mentioned in the quick overview, to this industrial revolution. And that was a significant shift. But now what we have with the digital. Gutenberg's creation of the printing press in the 1400s was huge, transformed the human mind, okay, absolutely transformed the human mind. What you have gone through, what you have lived through, what your parents have lived through, this immersion of the digital era has had an equally profound impact on the human mind and the way we think and the way we process in this whole digital era. One of the things that's in your book is this timeline. It's a really cool thing. It's I think it was tucked in my first page. Take a look at it, you know, and really check it out. There's some cool stuff. Cool stuff here. Okay. Okay, the last area that I think I want to add on and talk to you, talk about in Chapter 1 deals with the idea of media stories and the idea of the power that we have. And a lot of that comes from our political, democratic, and legal rights. And I want you to consider this for a little bit. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Consider this idea. Congress shall make no law. None. Okay? Let me go see if I can find a highlighter here. I'll just color it red, I think. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. No law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's all about media. In this country, it is one of the few channels, the few areas about which freedom of expression is grounded within our own country's constitution. That is highly unusual and something I think many of us take for granted. You know, we certainly, this is the First Amendment, you know, written in 1791, and definitely connected to the Declaration of Independence, 1776. So this is, what's that, about 15 years later that the First Amendment was written, and certainly it was written because they were tired of the British government shutting down printing presses, throwing people in jail. They didn't want anything to do with that. And so therefore this country was not going to be based on a government form of suppression. And it was a fundamental belief that in democracy, information is a good thing. And in a democracy, it's important to have as much information as possible distributed so that you and I can make informed decisions about who we elect as our officials, about the laws and the regulations that we put into place, about the things that affect our lives. And so First Amendment very much protects U.S. media. There's no other business within our country that gets this form of legal and political protection. And so it becomes very critical and very powerful. So at this point, I think I'm going to stop. I've added on about another 11 minutes of this, and there's so many more things I could do. But we'll stop. I have a few more things I want you to consider, and we'll do that in some exercises in class.